to the Cajun dance and the Zydeco. Filet gumbo and a crawfish pie. Filet gumbo and a crawfish pie.
My name is Fred Klein. I've been around here for a couple years. And my guest has been around Santa Barbara for a couple of years. Probably one of the great, certainly the best editor that I know of. Certainly one of the great raconteurs of all time. A little peripatetic from time to time, but I'm lucky enough to have him and spend a few minutes with us today. Shelly LowenKoph, welcome to our program.
Good to be back, Fred.
Well, I know it's always good to have you because you put me on my mettle.
Well, we just start, and we have an agenda to go through, and we never get to it because
That's true.
There's always something else.
Maybe I should
that
tell him
comes
let me tell him what the agenda is, because
Yeah.
we'll probably never get to it. And incidentally, as he was talking about what he wants to talk about, I realized that it might be wise to have pencil and paper, because there's a lot of quotable information that may be coming from him and possibly from me in this next half hour. Because I know he's got his, number one, he goes back almost as long as I go back, or maybe it's more, or
Well,
maybe it's about the same.
About the same, because I first saw you in the Shoreham Hotel
In Washington, D.C.
in Washington, D.C. It was my either first or second then ABA, American
Booksellers Association, right?
Convention. And I forget what you were pushing, but you were wearing like a sea captain's hat, a cap, you know, and looking somewhat like Mark Twain without the rocking chair in that famous photograph. But that's how far back we go, because even then the Shoreham was getting too small. They were getting more and more publishers, not the least of whom was somebody I ended up working for a while at Dell, and that's Donald Fine, left to start his own.
Right,
so
right.
That's how far back we go.
So we really go back to, and the important point, which I've never made in public before, but I certainly believe, is that was the golden years in publishing, in
Absolutely.
the history of the years, the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, certainly were the absolute most exciting time, I think, in the world of publishing.
It was the then equivalent, I would say, of dramatic television and motion pictures today, because the themes that were being published and the things that were being exploited, and absolutely,
You're right.
It's true, it was in a bubble, and a lot of individuals would complain, you know, white man and gender specific and all of that. But you guys had somebody who really took gender to a whole new level, and I'm talking about she of the elevator pitch, Jackie Suzanne.
Absolutely.
You know,
but I don't think I've ever told this story in public.
Oh, good. Let's have it.
I went on a publicity tour with Jackie for the first book, Valley of the Dolls. Jackie and her husband, Irving. We get to, she is the kind, she gets there 6:30 in the morning when the drivers are just coming in, getting the books that they're going to fill the dumps with. And she brings in coffee and donuts and whatever, and does this big pitch with them, and she is absolutely blowing them away. She's wonderful.
And Irving is standing there and saying, "See, I told you, the tighter dress, Jackie, it works, it works."
She does. We do television, we do radio, and then there's a bookstore nearby before we're going to leave. Cleveland. And we walk into this bookstore, and she goes around to each one of the salespeople. "Hello, I'm Jackie Suzanne. Have you read my book? How do you like my book?" And she goes around. Finally comes to one guy. "Hi, I'm Jackie Suzanne. Have you read my book?" He said, "I think it's a piece of crap." she went ballistic, and she really started to punch him. I had to get in the way because her husband was also going to take a shot at him.
Nice.
I had to stop the whole thing. And, you know, she could not take any criticism. She could say that she wasn't the greatest writer in the world. And
Yeah, but
she
you couldn't say that.
Oh, no. Oh, God. But she really paved the way for anybody who wanted to do publicity alongside the sale of a book. She cajoled. She would even send Christmas cards to those people. So Jackie Suzanne, really, well, you had to mention that.
Yeah, well, it's just all part of that long history and the things we've gone through on our way to
But I forgot about that.
Becoming dinosaurs, as it were. But right now, I want to still get more with you, because you have been. So you've lived here. Number one, you've been an educator. You teach. You're still teaching? I am still teaching.
Where are you teaching?
I am teaching now. What do they call it? They keep changing its name. It's called the Center for Lifelong Learning. It used to be the equivalent of CCNY. It was adult education. And
well, out where is it? Out at
310 Padre Street in beautiful downtown Santa Barbara at the Schott Center.
The Schott Center.
Sure,
I know it, but why don't I know it?
Well, think about Mission, and then the next block, Mission and Bath.
Yeah.
And there it is, this big, huge campus.
Oh, yes.
Okay.
So you're teaching there.
I'm teaching there.
You're still editing. I told you he's the best editor in town. You're still editing books. I'm sure every once in a while somebody said to me, yes, this comes from Shelly.
Yeah.
And you're still doing those with Tony LaPopolo. You're still doing weekend kind of
Right. We've
things.
got one coming up on
when?
The tail end, the last weekend in April, and we're sort of opening up the short story, and in a lateral kind of way that speaks to your agenda today, because a short story, publication of short stories, is a way to get the you types in your sales manager day to say that that the author has some kind of a platform or an audience. And I would argue that if you had two manuscripts, regardless of the genre or the form of equal quality, and they were both from relatively new authors, and everyone in the editorial meeting thought, well, this person has some potential and room for growth. If one of them had published a couple of short stories and the other one hadn't, you'd go for the one who had published the short stories because there is, you would sell 6 more books, but
you knew that person was also a writer, was more apt to be
and have a better sense of form, because a lot of first novels, including a remarkable one I just read, the author has had anywhere from 5 to 10 years to work on it, and in a sense to workshop with it.
Right.
And the novel I'm thinking about, she just happened to have as a teacher a former faculty mate of mine, a guy named Tom Boyle.
Tom Boyle?
Yeah.
Our Tom Boyle, T.C. Boyle.
Yeah, and he certainly looked over her shoulder. Her name is...
It's a woman.
Yeah, her name is Emily Fridlander, and the book is called A History of Wolves.
Oh, you told me about that, but now who published? Is that? It's been published, right?
I believe.
The history, you told me about that.
They're going to come after me if I get this
wrong,
but I believe it was Atlantic.
Oh,
At any rate.
Is she from Santa Barbara too? No. Oh, just.
No. She ran into him at our old stomping ground at USC.
Oh.
That's how
Well, you spent a lot of time at UCLA,
30
SB as well as UCLA. You and your wife Ann.
No, my own alma mater wouldn't have me. I'm an out.
Oh, who wouldn't have you?
Well, I've never worked at UCLA. I've worked at UCSB.
Oh, yes, I know.
And every time that's me. Every time I drive on campus there, I'm thinking, this is nice, but it's not UCLA. You know how that gets, and when you're there, you look at it and you say, this is great, but it's not Syracuse.
Oh. Anyhow, he still won't bring us up to date necessarily, but we'll accept that for the moment. But the subject we were going to talk about, and which we're
let's see if you can remember
inching
this.
into it, is publishing today. We just told you that the glorious days were the 60s, 70s, and 80s. Here we are, 2016, 17, 18, and major things, I was going to say major changes. I'm not sure they're all changes, but the wind is
Evolution,
moving.
really.
Yes, moving.
Well, look at it this way, because I know that you still follow the New York Times.
I read it religiously.
But the book review section.
Yes, yeah.
And you look at Kirkus, and you look at Publishers Weekly.
Do you know something? The library did not renew its subscription to the Publishers Weekly. So now I've got to go on. I've got to go on the computer, which I'm not good at, and try to find things.
Well,
I'll tell you, that's a major loss for me.
Murray will help you. Don't worry about it.
Oh, he did.
Okay, but here's the deal, though. I also follow the New York Review of Books.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
okay,
you do.
And the London Review of Books.
Okay.
And
this is all very literary, incidentally, but I'm sure you can find.
But
you can find the New York Review.
Literary from
the book section.
From the London Times
also,
and the LA Review of Books. But here's the interesting thing to me: you pick up the English publications and the New York Review of Books, and you see advertisements
for books that you've never heard.
Well, get this, from university presses, and at one time,
that's the one thing to write down.
Yeah.
He's mentioning university presses, and let's say that for a second, because I think what has happened in recent years, especially as a lot of first-time writers have suddenly come on the scene and want to get involved and can't get connected to the big New York City type publishers.
The Big Six.
The Big Six.
They're all owned by
well, I want to talk about the Big Six in a second. But so they are going to, some of them have been able to get connected to university presses. Not necessarily the university that you went to, the press of the university you even went to.
In fact, more
but
often
university
not.
presses obviously had developed an audience, certainly for, I'd say, not for the mystery, obviously, but for something serious,
wait,
memoirs.
Stop right there.
Oh,
because,
I'm wrong already?
No, there is a mystery writer that you guys used to publish. I'm thinking of Donald E. Westlake.
Yes.
And
old timers.
Right, and he was so prolific that he had at least three
different
pseudonyms and publishers. But the University of Chicago Press has reissued all of his mysteries, the so-called Stark Mysteries by Richard Stark, featuring a gangster by the name of Parker, who was portrayed in the movies by Lee Marvin. But University of Chicago Press.
Well, now we've been working with the Ross Macdonald Foundation.
That's another one. Yeah.
Yes, and I think that there are university press interests there too. Also, BBC, believe it or not, BBC is now doing some sort of publishing.
Yeah.
I still don't understand it much. I haven't found out enough about it.
And Ken, you're talking about Ross
Ken
Macdonald. He would be
Santa Barbara author.
Well, University of Michigan, PhD in 19th century literature.
Not the same time I was there. I think he was there a little before me. I'm not sure.
Well, but he somehow found a pulse beat in a kind...
He brought the psychological, the whole psychological approach to the whole area of murder and mysteries.
Right, and one of the things you could say in general is that every one of his stories has a disturbed teenager.
Never thought about it
that
way. Never
brings the story paying forward, like the zebra striped hearse and the chill. Boom, boom, boom. Or
great movies.
Yeah.
But let's go back. So anyhow,
okay.
Starting with this year, again, the attitude. The Obamas got $8 million for 2 books.
No, it was more than 8. It was...
It said 8 figures. I'm sorry.
It's 60. $60 million. 30 for Michelle, 30
really?
for him.
You got that breakdown?
Yeah.
Anyhow.
And now...
Now, for some, the biggest amount of advances...
I know Bill Clinton didn't get...
Advances in our day were maybe $50,000. Some big thing might be $250,000. I think we did go up to $2 million ultimately.
Yeah.
In all the years, the 30 years I was there. And what was it? It was for us, it was either of James Michener.
Yeah, it was Michener.
I think it was Michener.
But as we were discussing before the camera started rolling, I go walking in. I run the Los Angeles office for Dell, which at that time we were
just romancing each other. I'm not sure we were together early on.
No, that was before the big
the amalgamation,
marriage.
Which I do want to talk about because because you asked me. You realize that there is a Crown won the Obamas.
Yeah.
But there was Bantam, Dell, Doubleday, Random House. I'm trying to think of all the others under the umbrella. There are at least 10 to 12 different publishing imprints under that one umbrella. Every one of them were able to bid up for that now, and that's unheard of. I mean, now it's Penguin. You know, it's
and
Penguin.
Hachette was
Yes,
in
no, Hachette is separate. That one, but practically everybody. There are at least 12 units to Bantam, Doubleday, Dell, or whatever it is now.
And it used to be. I was instructed to answer the phone, dial Dell Delacorte. Yeah. And it always left me rankled because I thought at the time that the Dell yearling books were the thing that
for YA, yes.
Really.
And we had Choose Your Own Adventure.
Yeah,
matter of fact, they're now mentioning Choose Your Own Adventure almost as a way of life today. Even politically, I've heard that. But speaking of politics, I think have, we mentioned the Obamas, I think the current political atmosphere has drug up some very surprising situations.
I'll say.
The revival of books like 1984.
It Can't Happen Here.
Animal Farm. Handmaid's Table.
Handmaid's Tale.
And then the one you were
another Philip Roth that I love. In fact, I've just gotten finished teaching called American Pastoral.
Yes, I have.
And you know, there's...
Is he still alive?
Very much so.
But he's not writing anymore, right?
So he says. The New Yorker, speaking about politics, the New Yorker had a piece, I don't think it was more than 1,000 words, but in this year, certainly, in fact, since the 20th of January, which was the date that what's-his-name was inaugurated, and Roth just took him down and put him in place And yeah, he's still writing.
Well, I'm just amazed though at Animal Farm. You know, at all those coming back. I mean, it really is.
And that Sinclair Lewis, because in a way
it can happen here.
Yeah, and in a way, of all the writers of past generations, and a Nobel laureate in the process, Lewis is the one who has fallen off the radar.
Yeah.
But the story I got is that it's gone through 2 paperback printings. But here's a point I think we should make before we get sidetracked again and go off on
We got 10 minutes, so we're not.
we're
you
screwed.
see, we're getting sidetracked. Sorry,
We're
but
screwed because
finish your point.
We've got to get
Finish
to
your point.
the closing of Katz Brothers Deli or
Carnegie.
Carnegie. But here's the thing.
Yes.
You really were Mr. Paperback, you know, fiction and nonfiction. Bantam was the place to go. Yes, there was competition, but here's the thing. It's gone now. The mass market paperback is gone.
Absolutely.
It is
trade.
now the trade
paperback
and the machine.
At about $9.95, you're absolutely right. The trade paperback is
the
only Bantam title is the George the big HBO big Oriental old time series. What is it? What is the big?
The big.
No, you know.
I know. See what happens.
But going back to today, or jumping today for the moment, these items seem to be happening. Number one, Amazon is now opening bookstores. Is now opening bookstores, mostly from the West Coast, but pretty soon to the East.
Seattle is one.
Number two, bookstores. We would think from Santa Barbara, the bookstores don't stand a chance. Bookstores seem to be on the rise also.
Again,
selling things other than just books, but at least trying to keep part of the community.
However, just as 2 examples, in beautiful downtown Pasadena, you have Romans, and yes,
you still have,
they sell things other than books, but mostly books.
Yeah.
And then here in Santa Barbara, yes, you can get things other than books in Chaucer's. In fact, you can get the owner's photographs, which are stunning. Have you seen her photography?
No.
You've got to go in and look. Marley and Curly's photographs are really moving.
Wow.
But the real, to me, and this is where I think we'll never get together, is I have real heartburn when it comes to the subject of self-publishing. A lot of people say they do it because they don't have the patience to go through the emotion, or because they're told, as one individual I know here in Santa Barbara was told, the kind of books you write just don't sell. And yet he has self-published them and they sell. But self-publishing has, in a way, diluted the editorial process. It has diluted the cover art process.
Wow.
I mean,
wow, Shelly, boy, is that throwing a
I'm really good.
Wow.
But who was Bantam? You had a great cover artist, Montana.
Have you seen my piece of art? I have a couple of Bantam cover art.
And remember Chip Kidd at Knopf?
One of the great talents.
And then I have, and this is a deliberate
But you're
plug.
absolutely right. I really don't like covers today very often.
Deb Daly, who used to be the art director at SMP, she did my last 2 covers, and I insisted on her. Because
but yours were also, I was going to say this nonfiction. That's not true. The short story one was, you're right. But you're absolutely.
But the things you learn as a sales manager about a cover, and then people who say, oh, I've got a niece who is in graduate school at the art department, and she'll be happy to do your cover. And
well, people like the late Ellen Reed, which we are missing. But Ellen used to be able to get you a cover, somebody to do your cover, somebody to do, to produce it, somebody to edit it, to do all the various things if you want to be self-published, if that's what you're left with.
Yeah, but how many people have the go-to information to reach out and secure those people?
Not many.
So that even today I hear people saying, well, this doesn't need editing because I had an English teacher look at it. Come on.
Shelly, we have about 3 minutes to go. I haven't even mentioned 80 of things that I want to talk about that are happening today. New audio books are up.
Oh yeah,
Let's talk positive. James Patterson, who has 3 books on the bestseller list now, has now created something called short shots. Mm-hmm. Have you seen them?
Yep.
Books that are 150 pages or less.
All right. Remember something, in fact, John Steinbeck and Philip Roth have this in common. They both wrote outstanding novellas. And at the time Philip Roth was first published and his novella, Goodbye Columbus, the publisher didn't know what to do with it because it was too short. So they had to add some short stories to go with it. But look at Steinbeck with Of Mice and Men.
Yeah.
That is perfection in a small book.
Yeah.
So that's with us. And persons such as you, sales managers, are looking for ways to keep it under $20. I remember.
Well, that's obviously
Saul Bellows' novel Humboldt's Gift broke the $10 mark. That was the first hardcover to go over $10. From $9.95 to $10.
Yeah.
But
what's the price now? $27.95, $28.95.
Yeah, you put down 3 tens and you don't get enough left for coffee.
And we've got about a minute and a half.
And they had to go close the Carnegie Deli.
But somebody has to have bought it. Somebody has to, if they have not yet.
The Russians.
The Russians. There were 15 other things I wanted to talk about. I knew we would never get to
so I have
adult coloring books.
Right. I have to ask you, though, how much are the Russians paying you? Well, somebody had to ask. All right. Yeah, adult coloring books, but YA, and learn those initials if you don't know them. Young adult, because that is the cutting edge of publishing, because people are able to discuss such things as gender issues, transgender
New York Times
issues.
talked about it yesterday.